Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the FPL Podcast by Fantasy Football Hub. Just when you thought FPL and this season in particular couldn't possibly have any more drama or be more peculiar, Gameweek 3 told us to hold its beer as it proceeded to metaphorically spank us for being so naive. My name is Andrew and I'm joined as usual by two of the best FPL managers in the game. Andy is absent this week, taking a much needed short break, so 8-time top 10k finisher, hub strategist and writer Rich Clarke joins us this week in his place. Rich, how was your season started?
Oh, hi Andrew. Thanks for having me on. Not too well. I'm sure I'll touch on it later in the pod, but a pretty templatey start with predictable moves that haven't gone well. I haven't wildcarded yet, so there's still hope, but I'm well down the rankings at the moment.
We can't wait to hear all about that. We also have 6-time top 10k finisher Adam Hopcroft. Adam, how was your game week 3?
Do you know what? It was okay, but I don't think the viewers and listeners want to hear about my team. I think everyone's really intrigued about your wild cards, so I think we should get further ado. Let's just get straight into it. So, how did it go for you last week?
Okay, let me get on with my spiel, and then we'll move straight onto my podcast team. So, welcome to any new watchers and listeners. For our YouTube watchers, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen to ensure you don't miss anything. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. And don't forget to download our new free app, which includes everything our website offers. Just search for Fantasy Football Hub from wherever you get your apps. So this week, as Adam mentioned, we thought we would add to the drama and tomfoolery going on all around us by switching up our usual podcast order and checking out my wildcard outcome first. After Adam's ridicule last week, we'll take a look at that now. We will then have a look at some emerging players that are appearing on our radar, discuss a couple of listener topics which ask the questions that should we target penalty takers and what to do with Timo Werner. We will answer some questions for our Twitter at FF8_podcast followers, take a look at Rich and Adam's teams, review one of our Twitter followers teams and take a quick peek at the top of the at FF8_podcast mini league. So a packed show today. So straight onto my wildcard team. For those who didn't see it last week, I had Martinez in goals, I had Reece James, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Seiss and Mitchell at the back. I then had Foden, De Bruyne, Podence, Bruno Fernandes and Burke in midfield. And I had Che Adams, Jimenez and Werner up front. And at about 7 o'clock last night, I was sitting on 29 points with head in hands. Adam messaging me, asking me how my team are going, knowing damn well I've had a stinker, but thankfully... I'm just gutted we didn't record last night. No, I would have been.
Would have made much better... much better viewing anyway.
It would have been. All the tears and swearing and whatever else would have all been out. But thankfully, Martinez, the Villa hero, kept a clean sheet. My Liverpool double defence then proceeded to concede almost straight away before combining to get me a few points. So in the end, I ended up on 52. And actually, looking at my team for next week, I'm actually quite pleased. I do feel I got away with it a little bit because I was one of those who brought in the triple of Seiss, Podence and Jimenez for a combined total of 0.
Did you know what you would have got if you didn't wildcard? Have you gone back and done the maths?
No, but I don't think so. I didn't have Vardy. You know, I didn't have any of the big scores actually.
Yeah.
I actually think I've done okay by wildcarding because my team wasn't that great.
Well, I mean, from a long-term perspective, it looks, I'm pretty envious of it when I'm looking at it compared to my team. So, providing, of course, Wolves don't flatter to deceive and, lose another 2 or 3 games in a row, you're going to be okay, aren't you? Because you've got 3 Wolves players, as long as Podence's injury is not too bad. You've got 2 City players. You've got 3 Liverpool. Sorry, 2. You haven't got a Liverpool attacker. Is my only big observation.
But you have got Che Adams. Who wildcards and keeps Che Adams in it? I mean, you've got to be the only wildcarder to keep him.
Or who doesn't wildcard because of Che Adams? I think that was you last week, Adam.
I think like a lot of wildcards, if I would have wildcarded last week, the team I would have done worse than my current team. So I'm pleased that I didn't. And I think a lot of people that did wildcard did worse than their team the previous week. But I think you've done well. Like I said, I think the Liverpool defensive double up is looking quite good. I think Reece Reece James has been mixed thoughts on, but he created a lot, and I think I think assists will definitely come through him, whether clean sheets do. The only thing I didn't understand, and this is going back, is the Podence, because there was news that broke. I don't know if it was pre-deadline, but I think there were murmurs that he was going to be out, and so I was surprised that you stuck with him. But I suppose unless it's a long-term.
Well, there were murmurs, and there was nothing confirmed at all. They were just murmurs, and he's only 5.5 million. So I thought if he didn't play, I actually had Burke as my first sub. He got like a 3-pointer, but I was tempted to actually start Burke because that fixture they had at home to Leeds is probably one of the best offensive fixtures in the in the league. Okay, they lost at the end.
He got taken off, didn't he? So he got his points.
He did.
With a clean sheet.
He did, yeah. So with that in mind, and I also had Seiss actually at second sub as well. So because my bench was strong, and I wanted Podence's longer term anyway, because their fixture and now, as we mentioned last week, is really, really good. I saw him more, as long term move. I didn't see West Ham away as a great fixture. I didn't expect Wolves to score more than kind of 1 or 2 anyway. As it happened, they didn't score anything, but it's more like home to Fulham now this week. I didn't want to be planning in transfers, planning to bring in Podence this week. I don't like this whole planning in transfers.
How do you feel about Fernandes? Effectively filling the role of one of the Liverpool.
Well, this was the key.
A lot of wildcard teams like that where Bruno's come in and they've dropped Salah or Mane, and he was very lucky, wasn't he? Really, with
nothing lucky, no more lucky than Salah was in the first game. I go on. Sorry, I
was just going to say, but you say he's lucky, but Man United got a penalty in a season riddled with penalties. And he got the penalty and he scored it. It's the same as those, who say like Vardy are lucky. Oh, look, it's only penalties. So it's only penalties. Being a penalty taker is one of the key factors when deciding a striker for me.
I think on Bruno, because I own Bruno as well instead of a Liverpool attacker. And throughout the game, all I was hoping for is Man United get a penalty. I think, and that was really, really frustrating. And obviously, luckily, it happened, and shouldn't be that surprised. Man United getting penalties when there's loads of penalties. But I mean, after the full-time whistle, that was just incredible. I mean, I've never, and I actually, for some reason, I was doubting Bruno. I think it's because I was an owner. I double jinxed him on Twitter, got the tweet out he's going to miss. Yeah. That seems to work. But what a penalty! Stuck it away. I think what I would say is he's going to be frustrating to own, because when you've got the likes of, I know Salah and Mane are a little bit more, but they're throwing loads of shots at goal, posting decent stats. What I feel with Bruno, he just makes things happen in the sense that he'll get his points, but then, you'll wonder how sometimes. It was a great ball to Rashford, but Rashford had a lot to do to get an assist. And the amount of assists he's got to almost world-class finishes, but I don't think that can be luck. I really don't, because the amount of times it's happened, it's too much of a coincidence.
So at the moment, we're still only looking at 2 games of Man United. They're still not playing well, right? So I mentioned this last week. So he was the key to my good game week. So I was tempted to go with Son and leave money in the bank. And I'm so glad I never, because then it would have been a disastrous wild card, and I would have been banking in transfers. But I've got Bruno, I've got Podence, and I've got Adams, and 3 examples of where of what I tried to actually do there is plan them in advance as well. Okay, with Bruno, I didn't expect, he was obviously lucky last week. I'm not sure how he'll do against Spurs, but he's a long-term pick. Adams I picked looking at this week more than last week. Podence I've picked looking at longer term. So what it kind of allows me to do now is to look ahead now and proactively plan my transfers. So while everyone else is bringing in other players, I can now look and bring in other players again.
I think the one beauty of Bruno is he's actually fixture-proof.
He is fixture-proof,
and
100%.
I think last season he got assists against Chelsea, Man City. So he's definitely a fixture-proof player, because he can score out of nothing, create something out of nothing. So I'm not too worried about the fixtures. The problem with Bruno is it's hard to predict his horse. So that's probably the big difference. If you have Salah or Mane, you're going to want to captain them, or you'll be more willing to captain them, particularly in the easy home games. Whereas Bruno, I don't know if I could. I think he's good to have ticking along, but then his 10.5 million is a lot for that. So I think he's got a short stay in my team. He'll stay for this week, and potentially the Newcastle game, and then get moved to a Liverpool player for the two nice home fixtures against Sheffield United and West Ham.
Yeah, I can understand it for those two plum fixtures potentially, but for me, Bruno is a player like KDB and like Alexander-Arnold. If he's the only route I can get to Salah, then then fair enough. But that aside, as he's proved again on the weekend, so he had the best PPG post lockdown as well. He's the most consistent point scorer in the game, even over these last two where United have been pretty dreadful. He still averaged 7 points per game or whatever else, and they're not even playing well. So I'm going to leave him, but that. Salah pair, as you said, Salah at home on penalties. Maybe the time I take him out briefly, but not any massive rush, to be honest.
No.
Just to finish on your wild card, because I think you've scored quite well in comparison to a lot of wild carders. So it'd be good if anybody's watching on YouTube, if you've beat, is it 52 you got?
52, yeah. I think the average for a wild card team was 41.
Yeah, if you beat 52, post your team in the comments below. I think that'll be quite interesting to see, and we'll have a look at them.
Yeah,
be good.
And is that already locked in, that Jimenez captain for the weekend, or is it just there for a placeholder?
It's a bit of a placeholder at the moment. Other options are De Bruyne, potentially even Adams. Though I think that is going a bit rogue. So at the moment, I've got De Bruyne and Jimenez are probably my two who I'm tossing up at the moment.
How Fulham looked yesterday, their defending is just so bad. I think Villa had 4 or 5 big chances, and Villa played well, but there'll be better attacks than Villa, and they were just embarrassing at the back. It got their owner to comment, didn't it, about their centre backs, which is I think that was needless. I don't think he needed to do that. I think it's probably unfair on Scott Parker that he came out and did that.
Completely agree.
I think targeting Fulham for the captaincy is not a bad idea. And I think Jimenez, whilst he doesn't usually get huge scores, and I think Wolves looked off colour, he's got to be in the running this week, captaincy.
I'm very surprised at the amount of bus teams I've seen on Twitter that are currently on Salah as captain. I think, one, away he's not that good. But 2, Villa are yet to concede. And don't get me wrong, I'm confident that Liverpool will beat Villa, but I can't see them scoring 3 or 4 goals, whereas potentially you can see De Bruyne or Jimenez involved in a couple of goals themselves. I'm quite surprised at that.
I think in the last couple of games against Villa have played fairly defensive, and Mane has tended. I think Mane's got last season got 2 goals and an assist against us, so he might be the better option to go with. I actually disagree in that I think Villa will get beaten comfortably by Liverpool. I think we might give them a go for a game for 50, 60 minutes. But I think the quality of Liverpool, I think it'll end up being maybe 3-1. I think that, I don't think we'll get thrashed, but I think we'll get beaten convincingly. I don't think Liverpool will struggle, because I just think the level that they've started at and that performance last night,
it was pretty
definitely wasn't sloppy.
It wasn't sloppy. It was a strange comment.
Brave man.
You'll get a few save points from Martinez, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. Okay, so moving on then, we now have a graphic from our OptaStats tool showing the players who had the most shots in Game Week 3. So top of the shop, Harry Kane had 8 shots in Game Week 3. Mason Mount had 7 shots. Mitrovic had 6 shots. All kind of headers from the penalty spot.
Some of them went out for throw-ins.
Yeah, it was. Soucek had 5. Mane had 5. Solly March had 5. Lo Celso had 4. Cavallero had 4, Werner, Trossard, Mopai, Calvert-Lewin, Bamford and Salah all had 4 shots as well. So with this in mind, Rich, can I come to you first? Who caught your eye on the weekend? Who got you excited for future game weeks?
I've got a few. Well, first of all, I'll just pick one guy from my main team and my original team that stood out that I was really impressed with was Soucek, for West Ham on the Sunday evening. He was always in as my 5th mid. I thought it was worth spending the extra $500,000 on him. I just remember him being really, really attacking, and he just throws himself into the box, all the time on almost every attack. I I thought he was a bit unlucky to get that goal chalked out off as an own goal personally, but it's a crazy season of decisions, and I just think it bodes well for other games, and I won't feel bad about playing him any week now, even though West Ham's fixtures are tough. I've got a few injuries in my team, and I don't mind playing him this week to save taking a hit or that sort of thing. So he really stood out.
On Souček, I mentioned this, and I think I was having a chat with Tom from Who Got the Assist, but I think he's a sort of player that you need to play every week, because I think the types of goals he scores are going to be from set pieces, corners. They're very unpredictable. You can't say, West Ham are going to get corners pretty much in every game, or free kicks. So, and sometimes West Ham do a little bit better against the better teams. We saw their performance against Arsenal was quite impressive. I think at Old Trafford last season, they looked quite good. They beat Chelsea. So for me, and I think Souček might have even scored in that game. So for me, I think at 5 million, sometimes we get cons by their price and think, we've got to be a sub, but I think he's a perfect 11th player to free up funds to whack in to be starting 11. So I completely agree on Souček. I think he's a great shout, but I think the trap people fall into is I think points benched is probably the trap with Souček, because I think that'll happen quite a bit.
Yeah, true, absolutely. Good. Well, that's one. Andrew, I think I won't use them all up because I'll let Adam have a go, but I'll call out three from Brighton, that will have been mentioned in your previous podcast. So any of Lamptey, Trossard and Maupay all look very good prospects for, budget players that, aren't going to eat up a lot of budget, but Brighton are really going for it, aren't they? They're just charging up the pitch. Often Lamptey starts the attacks. It's 4.5 million. So if you're looking for, say, a downgrade from someone like Doherty or something that I'm thinking about, to free up some money, he's a great shout. I think he's 4.6 now. Trossard at 6 million, Maupay at 6.5. We'll get on to penalty takers later, but yeah, all of those three look good value. I
like Trossard. I think he was obviously very, very unlucky the weekend. Very two-footed as well. I think all his chances, he used his left foot, but was taking corners with his right foot. So, particularly the first one he hit, the swerve on that, that was incredible for your weaker foot. So, I think he'll do well. It'll just be interesting when, because Lallana and Basuma will be back in the team. Well, obviously Lallana was replacing Basuma the weekend. So, it'll be interesting whether he plays up front or in the hole still, in the number 10 position, and they keep playing Connolly. I think whatever happens, he will be playing, because he seems to be Brighton's biggest threat for me, and he can just score out of nothing. So I think the Brighton players, great shout. They're so unlucky the weekend.
Yeah, and I think they've got a tough game this week, haven't they? And they've got
Everton
up, don't they? After game week 5, they pick up pretty nicely. They've got a nice run of them. So yeah, definitely the Brighton guys. And the only other one I'd mention, who's probably my number one target, is Harvey Barnes, probably, I would say.
He's been so unfortunate.
He was everywhere. And I think, I'm probably going to get rid of Son this week. And I think for financial reasons, I'll possibly get Barnes in for him.
He looks good, doesn't he?
I think the only thing I'd say with Trossard, and I think he looks a fabulous player, don't get me wrong, but the vast majority of his shot, I think even to it hits the post on the weekend, he shoots a lot from outside the box. I know he hit the bar from the one, where he was put through and he smashed the bar, but the goal he scored in game week 1 was from outside the box against Chelsea, which Kepa may have done better with. I think both shots he hit the post with were outside the box as well. So, he's obviously got a hell of a shot on him, and he's been very unlucky. And that's maybe the only thing which would concern me slightly.
Good point.
Okay, Adam, who's left for you?
Well, I'm going to go with some probably more obvious ones, because I agree with all of the shouts that Rich mentioned. I think Robertson for me, and the reason that he impressed me. Obviously he messed up for the goal and cost him a clean sheet, but I think both him and Trent looked, the threat going forward was incredible. And on Robertson, it's not just this game. The last 11 matches, so post restart, he's got 2 goals, 6 assists, and 3 clean sheets. So 11 returns in 11. That was with Liverpool, not even so.
Has your daughter got any thoughts on players, Adam? They're
I
probably
know,
better
I
than
know.
yours.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for me on that, I think Robertson looks decent. I thought Mane looked incredibly sharp. I mean, we talked about in pre-season and why I preferred him over Salah. I think the penalties does swing it a little bit more in Salah's favour, but Mane has had 4 big chances in open play this season. Salah hasn't had any. I think Salah still looks good, and particularly from a creative point of view. So I think that they look good. I think, and then the other player that is really, really impressing me, not necessarily from an FPL point of view, but it's James Rodriguez. I think he seems. I think every match he's played this season, he's created a big chance, or at least one big chance, and he has some moments in the game which just. I mean, that pass for Coleman to pull it back for Calvert-Lewin, just incredible. And I actually think he'll do quite well for assists this season. I mean, it's a shame that Richarlison's taken over penalties, but so I think they're the players that probably caught my eye the weekend.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you on the Robertson front. I mean, you look at the value that him and Trent offer, by comparison to Mane and Salah, for instance. If you're looking to cover not having one of those with the 2 defenders, they're more than often going to be the 2 guys that supply the assist. And with clean sheets as well, not really being a part of anybody's returns at the moment. When they start coming in, and they probably will, it's great value for 7 million, isn't it? If he was a winger for 7 million, you'd probably still be thinking about buying him.
Of course you would. I mean, if you just looking at the attacking returns in those 11 games, 6 assists and 2 goals, that's as good as anybody for that price. I think the advantage it gives you, and obviously you're set up like this already, Andy, I think the advantage that it gives you is that you don't have to worry about the attacking, the defensive transfers as much. You can just literally have your team locked in. And I think over the course of the season, I'd be surprised. And obviously, we've got to factor in their base value of defenders, but I don't think there'll be an attacker 7.5 million that will outscore Robertson or Trent. I think the people will have spells through the season, but then you've got to time those transfers spot on. Whereas if you just go with Robertson and Trent, you can worry about your attacking transfers.
I think as well, just to add to that as well, there's another player who every time I watch Liverpool petrifies me. So I agree with you on Mane, and I think 3 of Mane's goals, or all his goals this season, have come from in the 6-yard area. So that's another indication that he is right. He's right on it, right? But I tell you who else scares me, and this may be my strategy moving forward. Every time they have a corner or free kick, Van Dijk is on the end of it, and he's been so close to scoring 3 or 4 times already this season. And I'm considering if there are decent alternative captaincy options on those games you mentioned earlier, home to Sheffield United and home to the other team, I'm very tempted to triple up and have Van Dijk, because the value there is just incredible. Would you be surprised, honestly, to see goal Van Dijk, assist Alexander-Arnold, or assist Robertson, or it's just constant off him, and they haven't even been playing well defensively either yet when they go on their run of clean sheets. And this is what we kind of mentioned last week when I said that I think Salah is overpriced when you consider the value you could get off all those 3, and not from their defensive returns, their attacking returns. Van Dijk again, he's getting it. He's so close. I wouldn't be surprised if Van Dijk scores about 6 or 7 goals this season, and a lot of points.
It could work, but can you imagine after 85 minutes how you'd feel when you're sitting on 3 clean sheets and they concede?
If they've had a goal and assist between them, I wouldn't really mind.
On a Sunday afternoon, I don't know if I could handle.
It also allows you to spread your budget out there and get some really good, interesting options. Players like instead of having Salah and whoever else, it could potentially mean I can have Son and Pulisic, just as an example. I think that's where I find it really exciting and interesting, is it allows you to have all these explosive players with that solid base at the back who in one game, as you say, Richard. So in one game they may concede. Over a period of 8, 10, 12 games, they're going to get a lot of points. They'll get massive hauls. They'll get nothing, and then they'll get the ones in between as well. So,
definitely a good option to maybe wildcard to that, rather than spend 2 or 3 defensive transfers, over a period of weeks getting to that. I've still got my wild card. That might well be. I've just made a note of that.
You are, you are rich. So the only the 2 I had on my list. So I had Bowen from West Ham. I know it seems a little bit obvious at the event, but I wasn't looking at him pre-season. Looks a really good player. And the other one I noticed was Stuart Dallas for Leeds. So apparently,
yes.
I haven't watched a lot of Leeds, but he had 3 shots on target. And the reason for that was because when Leeds play against kind of lesser teams, apparently they play with this back 3 and Stuart Dallas moves into midfield. Obviously, you probably wouldn't put Dallas in your team against a top team anyway, but against the lesser teams, like on the weekend, 3 shots on target. He had the 1-on-1 where he rounded the keeper even, and it got cleared off the line. So I just think, he could be a potential option, Rich. And there's your wild card. You've got your triple Liverpool, Stuart Dallas, Harvey Barnes, and Jared Bowen. There you go, and you can pack the rest.
I mean, is there anyone else you want after that one?
Oh, hang on. If you wild card, then don't forget Che Adams.
Don't forget Che Adams.
You can't forget Che Adams.
3 of our teams at the moment, anyway. So
he is a must. Okay, so on to our hot topics of the week then, which are: should we target penalty takers, and what to do with Werner? And firstly, we had a lot of questions about whether targeting penalty takers is a real and viable strategy moving forward. So we had some questions from FPL Matthew. Have the new penalty rules, together with VAR, turned FPL player selection into pick the penalty takers? With a question from FPL Boom. Are you worried about the penalty taker meta becoming a real thing? Is it good for the health of the game? And at the Proudster 1, I wonder what the penalty stats would have been last season using this season's interpretation. We have had 6 handball penalties this season already, compared to something like 19 in total last season. And Grandmaster, is it a legitimate strategy to bring as many penalty takers as possible on your wildcard, or will the rules get updated soon? So just to give a little bit of context around this, I've dug out a few stats. So the opening 3 weekends of the Premier League season have seen 20 penalties awarded in 28 matches, which is 77% of matches, with the previous season-long record being, and I'm going to ask you guys this, what do you think the previous record was for percent, the highest percent of penalties to matches? Adam, what do you think about that?
27%.
Rich, what about you?
Record? Oh,
you're right.
Maybe no more than 15% of the time.
Okay, so the record was actually 29%, which is, it's quite high, or kind of higher than you guys thought. But we're currently on 70% on matches.
I heard on Match of the Day or something that we were on track. If you model it forward, to get 88 penalties. Is that right in the season? 88 penalties from handball is the prediction.
Yeah, you've just absolutely stolen my thunder there, Rich, but I will plug on anyway.
Yeah.
No, this was a big increase on last season when just 8 were awarded in 30 matches. The interesting thing is that only 6 of these have been for handball, although there were none awarded for handball in the first 3 game weeks last season. This actually indicates a fair increase in penalties regardless of handball, which increased VAR scrutiny, and sheer bad defending, in my opinion, from Man City on the weekend has also contributed to. The new handball rule is the same rule that Serie A adopted last season, where 57 penalties were awarded for handball infractions, with 48 in La Liga, compared to just 19 in the Premier League. But it is worth pointing out that in the first season, when it was introduced in Germany, there were significantly more. However, in the second season, this has started to drop now as defenders and teams get used to this way of playing. So what could this potentially mean? Well, if the rules don't change and the current trend continues, we could be on for 271 penalties, with the previous Premier League record being a mere 112. So from an FPL perspective, gents, what are your thoughts? Adam, could I come to you first?
I think at the moment, there are obviously a lot of penalties, and like we said, there's only, was it 6 that have been given for handball? So the new handball rule hasn't had as bigger impacts as people are making it, out. I think that with referees going over to the monitor now, I think that's going to help with more penalties. But I think by and large, taking the handball ones out, I think they've got the decisions right. in the majority of cases. I personally think that penalties will slow down. I think in the Bundesliga, apparently they adapted quite well to it, and I think that you would think that defenders will adapt to these new rules. There'll be a couple that people will be able to stop, but I think the rate of penalties will slow down. We're not going to get as many. We're not going to get penalties in 75% of matches. I don't think that's feasible. I think there's also a danger that we overlook some really good options because they're not penalty takers. So for me, I think it's a factor, yes, of course. And if you're genuinely 50-50 between two players, I think you want to factor in the penalty taker. But I don't think it's got to the stage where we should only be looking at penalty takers or we're picking them because they're a penalty taker, because you're relying on, a team getting given a penalty then. And I don't think that, again, that's going to be very, very hard to predict when that's going to happen. So it should be a factor, of course, probably more of a factor than before. However, I think we've just got to be careful you don't overlook some good non-penalty taking options.
What are your thoughts, Adam, around whether it is better to have consistent decisions like this or roll back 3 or 4 years when everyone was complaining about inconsistency, decisions being wrong, etc.? What would you rather at the moment?
Honestly, I quite like it. And the reason I do is, you mentioned it's consistent, and I think they have been consistent with it. And the big difference last year, when they brought in the handball rule, it was really penalising attackers. The same with the offside rule. They were getting penalised for being offside, but they weren't getting the opportunity to necessarily play on. So I think now it's weighted more in the favour of attackers, and it's probably maybe gone. I think the handball is a little bit excessive, but at least it's leading to goals and entertainment. And I would rather that, and I think we'll adapt. This has been happening in the Champions League, so it's only because it's come into the Premier League that people are and because of the number of penalties that have been given. But there's only been 6 for handball. We've got to remember that. So I quite like it. It means more goals, means more entertainment, and I think it's very easy to say, if we went back 3 or 4 years when it was referees, there's so many mistakes, and all that would happen on Match of the Day is just blaming the referee. Whereas now it's the same rule for everybody. It actually is black and white now to an extent. So I've adapted to it, and I've enjoyed all the goals and entertainment. Probably because Villa haven't been hit with any dodgy penalty decisions. I haven't had anything to moan about, but I think in general VAR has been better this season, and I think how they've, with the monitors and everything, and not putting the flags up and all of that, I think they've been positive changes, and I think we'll adapt to this rule which has been applied in the Champions League. So I think we'll adapt and get used to it. And I expect the defenders to get better and more streetwise with these decisions. I know it's probably not a popular opinion, but like I said, I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying all the goals. I'm enjoying all the goals, and it's entertainment, isn't it? So I'm happy with it so far, or not unhappy with it.
Cool. And what are your thoughts, Rich?
Well, I've listened to that, and I also, I don't know if you caught what Roy Hodgson said at the weekend about it, and he sort of gave a very sort of simplistic explanation about, when the guy intentionally tries to block the shot with his hands, it's penalty, and when he doesn't, it's not. And I do think there's probably already been some sort of referees committee intervention or whatever to talk about it. Because I think when the referee goes to the monitor and he sees the ball hitting the hand, he's almost kind of got toward the penalty.
Agreed, yeah.
The current rule. And so if the VAR's in his ear going, get over there and have a look, it's hit his arm, I don't think he's got anywhere to go at the moment. And some of them that I've seen are point blank, and the guy, particularly I think the Eric Dyer one, when he had his back to...
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, there's some of them are really harsh, and the guy doesn't even know the ball's coming towards him. And so I can see some sort of sanity check coming in the next few days, but that's not really answering the question. You were asking me whether or not I would be targeting penalty tackles, and absolutely, it's definitely a factor. Although I think I will I will still be targeting penalty takers from the best teams. So, for instance, Mitrovic
agreed.
is a penalty taker, and I can't wait to get rid of him.
After one blank, Rich,
I'll probably get rid of him for Jimenez, if I can afford it. So it's not about having a penalty taker and not and keeping him because he's a penalty taker. It will be, you want the penalty takers within the best attacking sides. So. And there was an interesting graphic came out today. Someone had put together analysis of who all the penalty takers are and what all their career records were, and you can see who is a good penalty taker versus just the person who's got the job. So some of the penalty takers like Jimenez, Mopé, etc., they're up in the 90 percentile for converting them, whereas others like Mitrovic, he scores 70% of the time. So there's some good stats out there.
I think Bruno Fernandes was the highest that had taken a decent number of penalties. I think he took 31, scored 29.
94%, Adam, you're absolutely the highest one. Yeah.
I mean, there was a couple of 100%, but they hadn't taken close to 30 penalties, which
you can rely on someone 90+% of the time knocking it in. It's got to be a consideration, and but do it from a team that's going to get a lot of penalties like United.
Agree. I think in terms of the rule itself, I do agree with it. So even though I fell foul to it on the weekend, in terms of the last minute goals and things, not with Bruno. I had Bruno, but from a defensive view in some other games, the kind of Doherty clean sheet I was waiting for never materialised, and it does leave you feel really, really frustrated. But I just think maybe, kind of Adam's thinking a little bit, it's just change, and humans behaviourally are generally bad at dealing with change on something that they've become so familiar with. And the rule is clear. The first line of the rule is if the ball hits the arm outside of the body line, so if the arm is raised anywhere outside the body line, then it's a penalty. And I think the thing which we can all now see is as soon as you watch it back on the replay, and as soon as it hits someone's hand, look at kind of Mopai's one, even Dyer's one, all these ones, we know everyone knows, and everyone has the same understanding that the rules applied properly, that is a penalty. And that for me is much better than subjective calls personally.
Completely agree. It takes away the subjectivity, and I think I think that's spot on. But there used to be before with handballs, one person would say it was, one person would say it wasn't. But I think now, what's been quite good actually with VAR, with the majority of decisions, we can almost guess what they're going to give.
Exactly.
And I quite like that.
But it's not even a guess now, and this is where I think it's good. It's the right answer, or it's the right answer. So you're going to get a few which are incredibly marginal, this like sleeve rule, and if his arm's slightly out and wherever else. But at least we know in a couple of seasons' time, we'll just look back and it'll just be the norm, I think. So that's just my very quick take on that. I think the big advantage in terms of targeting penalty takers is that most of the penalty takers in the teams are actually the best players or the key strikers in the teams anyway. If we're looking at people like Bruno, De Bruyne, Vardy, Jimenez, Ings, just to name a few off the top of my head, there's probably a lot more as well. I don't think you actually have to go far away from that to actually target the penalty takers, which is a big advantage. I think the only one I can think of really off the top of my head is probably Clarke or I can never say his name, Clarke or Cleese from Leeds, who is maybe someone you wouldn't have in your team, based on his attributes outside of being a penalty taker.
But he's cheap enough if you
exactly.
want a $5.5 million player.
Exactly.
It's a Maximan replacement or something like that.
Yeah, even it's even Wilson at Newcastle, it's Mitrovic at Fulham. They're generally the players you would pick anyway in that team. I think the only other maybe knock-on effect or impact it may have on my team is potentially, and here I am saying about trebling up on Liverpool defence, right? But it could potentially be maybe taking a bit of money out of the back and maybe not relying on the 4.5s for solid defensive teams as much as I have in the past, because if we're going to see even a 10%, 20% or even more decrease in clean sheets because of this, I'm not sure it's worth it. So
Yeah, good point.
I know I've mentioned about kind of Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, and Van Dijk. I'm not sure how many penalties they will give away because the opposition teams can't get near their box. I think there's a bit of a difference. But for the other ones, I'm not so sure. I think Lamptey has actually been a bit fortunate in this last. I say fortunate. He's earned the penalties, right? He's not going to do that every week. They're still conceding goals. I'm not sure. He's a fabulous player. Don't get me wrong.
There's talk of him going to Bayern Munich.
I saw that, yeah, but I'm not sure. He's not going to earn a penalty every week, right? Where he probably concede most weeks. So again, I'm not really sure how good a pick he is, just for example. Okay, so on to our second topic then, and this was what to do with Werner. So we had questions from the Vardy boys. Werner, keep the faith or sell? We had questions from Karan. I feel I'm asking this question every week now. Keep or sell Werner for Ings? And we had an off VT MPI overloaded on Chelsea. He's got Werner, Havertz and James. Definitely not planning to drop James, given his attacking potential, given the lack of clean sheets elsewhere. Should we decrease Chelsea exposure? If so, who to drop? Werner and Havertz, or for whom? So, Werner, let's go to the Chelsea fan. Rich, what are your thoughts on keeping Werner?
Okay, well, it's disappointing that he hasn't scored, obviously. But I think whether you get rid of him now or after the international break, I think it depends on what other fires you've got to put out.
Yeah, I agree.
But personally, I've got some problems in my midfield that I need to resolve. And his next two games are Crystal Palace at home and Southampton at home. So even though he hasn't scored yet, there's no busting rush to get rid of him. He could score 5 goals in those 2 games. I doubt he will, but I feel sure he'll get chances and he'll get 1 or 2. Yeah, I think he may. Didn't Jorginho miss a penalty? I don't know.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
yes, he might. And he doesn't always start, does he? So he might be on pens.
I know we should come off the penalties discussion, but you could well see Werner taking the penalties for Chelsea as well. So I'm personally happy to give him the next 2, and find. And if at the end of 5 games he hasn't scored, possibly if Lampard's continuing to play like Tammy Abraham in the centre forward position or something like that, and he's out on the wing, then I might look to move him on to generate some funds. Certainly a downgrade to Ings or Jimenez price wise is a sensible move because of the penalties, because of the form of those players, and then by that time you're probably going to have Pulisic back, who's probably for me the most exciting player to have for Chelsea once he's starting games. So
yeah, agreed. Cheaper as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Really nice answer there, Rich. So for you, even though you've potentially got Ings at home to West Brom and Jimenez at home to Fulham, you still think Werner is the best option. What about yourself, Adam?
So I agree with what Richard said in the sense that I can see the logic for keeping him. And I think that they've got good fixtures coming up. He's a quality player. He will come good. I think the question for me, my team's set up okay, are there better alternatives? And I think there are for cheaper at the moment. I think both, you could argue, Jimenez, he's got Fulham were that bad. I know Wolves weren't great, but I can see Jimenez doing, exceptionally well. There feels less risk there as well. He's proven, he's got goals, assists, he's done it, last couple of years. I think the other thing against keeping Werner is Frank Lampard. I think I've got such big question marks with him as a manager. I think he chops and changes too much. I don't think he knows his best 11 or how to get the best out of these players. And I think he will be a big failure this year, in my opinion. And I think he'll be one of the first managers to go. We might get a little bit more time because of the Chelsea connection, but I just think sometimes he tries too hard tactically to make things work. And I'm not sure he's the right manager to get the best out of Werner. So I think for that reason, I will probably do Werner to Jimenez. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. I'll wait, and obviously there's League Cup games. If Werner gets a hat-trick in midweek or there's injuries, then I may not do that move. But at the moment, I'm thinking for $1 million less and Fulham, and he's got Fulham and Newcastle at home or in the next few game weeks. I think Jimenez is a really strong option.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just got a different route personally to get to Jimenez, so which for me would be Son to Barnes and Mitrovic to Jimenez, which I've got exact money to do, and then I could have Werner and Jimenez for the next two. So,
yeah, and I don't think there's any rush to get rid of Werner from my perspective, and I think it's going to be team specific. So I don't think there is really a right answer on this.
Yeah, I think you're right, and as well, one of the reasons I wildcarded early was to get on Wolves' run. Okay, it didn't work out last week, right? But I've now got Werner and Jimenez in place. I've got Adams as well. Ideally, I'd like Ings instead of Adams, but I couldn't have everyone, right? But I think the danger with getting rid of Werner, right? He's a world-class player, right? He is a world-class player. He's got really nice fixtures, and he hasn't scored now in 3. And Rich, you said if he doesn't score in his next 2, bear in mind he's had as many shots as anyone else in the league as well. He hit the bar on the weekend. He's earned a couple of penalties as well. He's had attacking intent in every game. If he's playing like like Aubameyang last night, for example, or Rashford in the first game where they didn't have a sniff of the penalty box, I would agree. I think he has been there, but I do think sometimes we're a bit too keen to look on previous performance for how a player is going to perform in the future. At Leipzig, Werner went on these runs of 4 or 5 games without scoring, and then he'd score like 6 in 4. And the last thing you want to do is not be there for his points and then take him out for his points. So then the week or the weekend after that, you're clamoring to get him back because his fixtures actually over the next kind of 6 or 8 games are actually okay. They're good, and there's a lot of potential for goals there. So my personal view with Werner, given the fixtures, given that he's looked dangerous, I would keep him and try and get to those key players you want another way personally. But again,
could mean for me selling Che Adams before West Brom. Not sure I can do that.
No chance of that, mate.
I'd never live that down when he gets his hat trick. I can see your point on that. It's not that I wouldn't trust Werner. I don't trust Lampard.
Yeah, I understand that.
That's my test, and I think Crystal Palace have actually defended fairly decently, and I think they'll make it quite tough for Chelsea based on how they played the last few matches. So,
but Ings has got a nice fixture on the weekend. The week after that, they're actually away to Chelsea, aren't they? And obviously, Jimenez has got a nice run. I think they're all great options, and this is why I think I would try another way. Like I say, I'm sure everyone listening to this has had occasion where you've taken out a player because he's an excellent player, just hasn't scored the points, and as soon as you take him out, they start scoring points. So I'd just be a bit wary.
It's the way it's been going, isn't it? For the first 3 weeks, the player you've removed scores the following week, and I do think we're looking at not necessarily that with Werner, but I do think we're looking at that, again here. So because of injuries and other players that I just don't want in my team anymore, I think he's okay for another few weeks. But it does. Yeah. If I was wildcarding, I probably would get rid of him.
And that's not a bad shout. But for those who aren't, if your team is in that good a shape that you can afford to take out a world-class striker with 2 decent home fixtures in front of them, then your team is better than mine. I think that's the way I'd look at that.
So it could be a lot of people then.
It could probably be I say that. I took out
3.3 million people.
I took out Son after game week 1, so what the bloody hell do I know? Okay, so now we have 3 community questions. We will answer 1 each. Rich, as our guest, you get first dibs on question you want to ask this week. So,
I'll pick the one. Who are the essential players to have on a wild card?
Okay, and who are your essentials then, Rich? To put you on the spot.
Well, the thing that's stopping me wildcarding is I think I've got most of the essentials in, or that I can get what I see to be the essentials in a couple of moves. So that's why I haven't pressed the button yet, because I've got Salah. I know there are teams without him, but I think he's essential and he's just not going anywhere for me. I've got De Bruyne in. He was one of my transfers last week. I did the typical sort of Aubameyang Salah season start.
Yeah.
Got De Bruyne in last week. Again, he's not going anywhere. Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't going anywhere either. I know he's had a slower start than Robertson, but
he looked good last night, mind. He
played very
He
well.
did. Yeah.
Last night, he got booked and conceded and still got 3 bonus
That's
points.
crazy.
So, he's definitely, an essential. And I think the only other player that I think I'm scared to go without this week is Jimenez. And it doesn't really suit me to bring Jimenez in because I've got Son and St Maximin to get rid of. But I want to try and bring him in, and I think I can do it in 2 moves. So I would say at the moment Jimenez is close to essential because of the next 4 fixtures.
I'd agree.
I would definitely have him in a wildcard team, and I guess that's the source of the question, is from someone who's looking to wildcard. So apart from that, I don't see the United players as essential. I don't see any of the other City players as essential. Probably wise to try and get some Leicester coverage because they're going so well.
Fantastic.
Great, yeah.
Thank you, Rich, and thanks for the question at YG_drip. Okay, Adam, you get second pick on the question.
I'm going to go with FPL Daily, Tony Daly, one of my favourite Villa players, and naturally drawn to that Twitter handle.
He was rapid, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly, lightning quick. So, following the large point swings in players week to week, is making no transfers the best policy. I think what Rich and Andrew just talked about with Werner, there is a risk taking him out, and I think we've all, a lot of us this season have maybe taken out Son and then he's hauled 1 week, or taken out Mane and similar. So, I think if your players have got good fixtures, it does make sense to keep them, because otherwise you're playing the game of variance and rolling the dice. So I think if they've got good fixtures, if they haven't, then like for example, if you had a player who's got it might be that you've got someone who's got City away. Well, actually, that's quite a good fixture, isn't it? But I think if they've got a tough fixture run, it would make sense to swap them. But I think if a player that you've got is performing quite well, or even if they're a top player and they've got good fixtures, keep them in there. Don't risk taking them out based on what we've seen so far. It's rewarding the patient manager.
I think the variance week on week has just been
huge, isn't it?
Incredible. Yeah. You can't manage it, and you can't predict what's going to happen. But bear in mind, FPL, is kind of all about trying to predict, and reduce the odds in your favour to kind of predict what's going to happen. It's so difficult at the moment. So I agree.
When you get unpredictable football results, a lot of the experienced managers don't do very well, because they've got experience of historically knowing and predicting, the probability outcomes.
Exactly.
And that's where you see huge, ranking drops for people that have put a lot of thought into it, and people who've got players or bought in players, on a bit of a whim, can do very well. But it's a long game, and over the season, it normally rights itself somehow.
So what's your question then, Fergie?
Okay, so the question I'm answering is from @JIngram1985. Who is the best Son replacement? He says Rashford would be if you had 9.5 million, but who would be best 9 million and under? Is it worth getting in Foden and then using funds to upgrade elsewhere? Really interesting one, a very topical one this week. My initial instinct, so I still think that Foden he didn't play well last week, but I think he'll come good. We've already mentioned Harvey Barnes. I think if you don't have Vardy, you have no route to Vardy. I think Harvey Barnes possibly is the best pick. He hasn't returned yet much in terms of FPL points, but he's on it. I think he's had the joint 4th most shots in the box or something along those lines so far this season. So I think he's a really good option. Or you could actually hold off till after the international break. So bear in mind, Pulisic maybe back after international
Good
break.
shout, yeah.
You can hold off there potentially and bring Pulisic in there because, again, you don't want to be using transfers kind of up and off, etc. Appreciate you may lose a bit of value on Son, but Pulisic at 8.3 is a bit of a bargain anyway. So I think they would be my 3 kind of picks there. Anything different there, gents?
Zaha possibly.
Yeah,
I think
not a bad show.
I think the Chelsea fixture suits him, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him score, particularly if you look at the goals they conceded versus West Brom. Potentially on pens as well.
Did you mention Mahrez, Andrew?
No, I didn't. That's a really good shout.
Mahrez
flipping it.
I think given the fact that Jesus is out, I think there's less of a rotation risk with probably Sterling having to play up in a false 9 or something, or as a number 9. You know, that there's room for one of Mahrez and Foden to play most games. So I think he's probably a good shout, I would say.
Yeah, good shout.
Really good shout, especially against Leeds as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I'm not necessarily going to do that though. I don't know why.
I do think it's a good shout. I never really like tripling up on attacking teams, and purely because of what happened last week, it just decimates your score if it doesn't. If it
boom
doesn't
or bust,
happen,
isn't it?
Boom or bust, exactly. In defence, it's not as bad, right? But when you're attacking and it doesn't come off, I've seen screenshots of the midfields this week that have had Son and then 3 City mids and Podence, for example, and they've scored a combined 8 points, whatever it is. It's absolutely horrific. So, okay, cool. So let's now have a look at Rich's team. So, Rich, if you could read out your team and give us a view on your thoughts on how it's getting along.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my team for this weekend coming up is McCarthy in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, James Justin, Charlie Taylor, Matt Doherty. So 4 at the back. Souček away to Leicester. Salah provisional captain away to Villa. Sorry, Adam. De Bruyne away to Leeds. Adams, Mitrovic, and Werner. That's obviously pre any transfers. On my bench, I have a lot of problems. I've got Son, Mitchell, and St. Maximin.
Wow.
Didn't transfer him out last week, so not got much of a bench with Mitchell away to Chelsea, assuming Sam Maximin does not recover, although he may get a EFL Cup game later in the week that will help at least, me have a potentially playing player there.
How many free transfers have you got?
I've got one, just one before the break. I was working out how long it is since I've taken a hit, because I don't take many hits playing fantasy football, and it was October last year.
Wow!
I last took a hit.
A year, a 12.
Nearly a year. I think it was the end of October, something like Gameweek 13, and it may have been early November. But basically, I'm thinking of taking a hit this weekend, and the moves I'm pretty sure I'm going to make are Son to Barnes and Mitrovic to Jimenez. And
brilliant moves. Go for it.
That will give me Werner's 2 home games. Jimenez is a potential captain. Adams is fine either, to carry on against West Brom. And that, I feel that -4 significantly improves the state of my side. I haven't wild carded. Gives me the possibility of scoring a lot of points this weekend. It makes me feel a lot better before the international break. So for 4 points, I think
the fact you're taking out an injured player as well, that sort of gets rid of a little bit of the risk. I think that's good, and then you're actually using the funds that you save. So like those moves.
Thanks, Ed.
That's a bit of a no-brainer, mate. I think your team will look nice. Just a thought was in my head just about wild cards. So I think it's very easy to look at the 1 week wild card team, and I think just harken back a little bit, and hopefully this may provide potentially a little bit of comfort for those who've wild carded, and didn't get above the average or didn't smash it this week,
or didn't do as well as you,
or didn't do as well as me, obviously. But what I'd say is like your teams are now probably looking significantly stronger than the vast majority of the other teams, and probably will for a couple of weeks as well. So Rich, very experienced manager now. So I'm up against Rich in our fantasy football hub league. I will be -4 up on Rich already. Okay, he's got his wild card in hand.
He's basically saying you got a shit team.
No,
Rich.
no, I'm not. But I suppose I'm trying to give a little bit of comfort to wild carders who haven't had it this week. You could score a 90-pointer this week, whereas those who are still stuck with, all kind of last month's favourites get a 50 on.
Some Maximans and Mitrovic's
Exactly that.
All those players, absolutely.
I can hope. So let's have a look at Adam's team then. Adam, do you want to run through your team?
Yeah, so we've got McCarthy in goal, Justin Alexander, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Seiss. Then I got James Rodriguez, De Bruyne, Foden, Fernandes, and Calvert-Lewin, Adams, and Werner. So I've got captain on Shay Adams at the moment.
I was going to say this must have been a misprint, because there's no way anyone in their right mind would be captaining Shay Adams.
I think I put it as a prompt just to make sure I spoke to you about Shay Adams and your wild card. I think that was it. So no, I'm going to captain De Bruyne. I just think it's from my team, my setup, it's the most obvious captain. Just because City weren't great against Leicester, I think they'll get more freedom against Leeds. So I think if I had Mane, I don't like captaining players against Villa, so I probably wouldn't. But I think Mane will get joy against Villa, unfortunately. But I think De Bruyne and Jimenez look really good shouts for this week. So I'm going to go De Bruyne.
Have you used your transfers there, Adam, already?
No, I'm tempted to. So I think my team looks okay.
I think it looks very good, actually.
Yeah, and I think the only player I haven't got that I would really like this week is Jimenez, and I could get him in for Che Adams. I could get him in for Werner. I'm reluctant to get him in for Che Adams because if Che Adams is going to score, it's going to be against West Brom at home. So I think the reason I might do it for Werner is because it frees up $1 million. And Jimenez is just tried and tested. Fulham at home, that could, he could haul in that.
Do you think he might save for the international break, or you're not?
Yeah, I might do. I might do. I mean, just looking at it now and following our conversation, I am more in line with saving. But what I'm trying to do is I write down my thoughts at the start of the week, and I'm just at the moment I'll wait till Friday night and make a decision after the Carabao Cup has been played, because I think that usually throws a few surprises, an injury or a player that you expect to be benched or not play. So I think I'll just wait. I'm forgetting price rises this year, not interested. Everyone else, let them get impatient and go and waste money. There's so many great options this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I will not be making early transfers this week. Last week, I went against one of my own principles, made an early transfer because of Son dropping in price and wanting to get him at 8.9, and did it early and knowing he had games in between, and then he goes ahead and plays two games or whatever, and by the weekend he's knackered and does a hamstring, and so therefore, that is silly to do that move. Do it early just because of the odd 0.1 here and there. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to wait until all the games are played.
Got a really nice team there, Adam. I hate to compliment you, but you've got.
It's better than your wildcard team, isn't it?
Well,
I've still got my wildcard.
I'm not sure about that, but you've got 8 playing at home. You've got 8 playing at home, and the 3 that are playing away are for Liverpool and Man City. So that's quite.
Yeah,
a nice
that's
team.
true. I think it would it would make sense to save, and I'll just hide behind the save when Jimenez is playing. So hopefully they'll have another horror show, and Tim Ream will save the day.
Exactly. So our final team review this evening is for Twitter follower TJ Crane 1978, who retweeted our podcast tweet with his team. Just a reminder to all that if you want a chance to have your team reviewed, then you need to do this same next week. So his team he's got McCarthy and Martinez in goals. He's got Alexander-Arnold, Doherty, Walker-Peters, Mitchell and Bernardo at the back. He's then got El Neni, Mane and Salah, Soucek and Son in midfield, and he's then got Calvert-Lewin, Ings and Bamford up front. And what he said, this is his current team, thinking about taking the hit or playing my wild card in order to address the issues I currently have on my team. So, Rich, can I ask you first what you think of TJ Crane's team? These moves currently include a -8 as well, by the way.
Basically, with 8 points already in hits, I think in short, I think this team needs rebalancing. quite considerably. I think you mentioned a defender that I didn't quite scribble down that I don't think is even playing. Did you say Bernardo?
Yeah, the Brighton defender.
That's one that I would definitely put right. Doherty, he's in my team at the moment, but I don't think he's worth 6 million or 5.9 million at the moment playing for that side. So I'd probably, there's a bit of option to rebalance the defence, but he's got too much money in the midfield in my view, with both Salah and Mane.
He's on a -8 already, so if he wildcards, he gets 8 points back effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. So
and his team, I don't mean to be disrespectful of other people's teams, but he's in a little bit of a state.
Yeah.
I can't see an argument not to wildcard. I think it needs, like you said, it needs rebalancing, and he's going to end up taking another couple of hits. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer in that. That'll be my personal view.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that to players I would definitely take out would be El Neni, Bernardo, Doherty at this stage, and Son obviously because he's injured. So that's 4, and there's quite a lot of money coming in there from Son and Doherty as well. So you could find that once you've got that back in, you'd be tempting to keep Mane and Salah, but I would just quickly say, choose one of Mane and Salah.
Agreed.
And get De Bruyne instead, probably.
And get a City mid in, either De Bruyne as a premium, or maybe Sterling as a differential, or Mahrez as a cheaper option, and then probably upgrade Bamford to Jimenez, and that would give you the ideal front three, probably the template front three at the moment, which is Calvert-Lewin, Ings, and Jimenez.
I'd also mention he's got Martinez and McCarthy. You probably don't need the 4.5s. I mean, that's up to you, but you could save $500,000 there. But
yeah,
I think the kind of issue I see here is you're already taking 8 points. Your team probably isn't very, optimal going into next week and the week after anyway. So you're probably going to likely have to take more hits to get it. I think now is the ideal time to wildcard for you. Get yourself on the front foot. Get in the really exciting plays we just talked about there, De Bruyne, Jimenez, Robertson, maybe, all these players we just talked about. Get yourself on the front foot and go into the international break, not off the back of a -8 and still a team you don't really like.
Good advice, yeah.
Yep. Okay, remember it's about enjoying the game as well, right? This is really important. And if you're going off a stinker and a -8 and you still got a team you don't like, it's going to be a long 2 weeks for you, I think. So,
if it makes him feel any better, I just got a team review in from someone today that's just taken a 28-point hit this week already.
They used their wild card already.
No, they haven't used it. They've just it's just showing there as 8 transfers. They haven't hit.
Got a wild card that.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully TJ Crane 1978 that has helped you hit that button and start having some fun with your team. Okay, and finally then it's time to take a quick peek at the top of our @FFH_podcast mini league. So in 10th place we've got Sarab Magodia with Big Dyke Energy. In 9th place, Abinhay Shavravathi with Shazams. In 7th place, Tianan O'Brien with YM Che. In 6th place, Graham Yarrow, Kim Kardashian. In 5th place, Noor Bujela. In 4th place, Emmanuel Mbotti. 3rd place, Ollie Rantana. In 2nd place, James Deaton. And in top place is Pentagon Tower, just 5. Only a 54-point game week, which for this week, considering normally in these early stages, of these mini leagues, they tend to be, the kind of 80, 90 pointers, which means, he must have had a very good start. So he's 639th in the world. I say he, it might be a she. 639th in the world, a game week rank of 1.2 million. Only scored 54 points. So Martinez in goals, Walker Peters, Seiss, Ayling, De Bruyne, Sterling, Fernandes, Harrison, Jimenez, Marshall, and Richarlison. So nothing very special there really, but it just proves that if you play consistently well, make the right decisions, you can absolutely fly. So 639th in the world, very, very well played, just 5 with your Pentagon Tower team. Just noticed I just noticed that not only has Adam gone, but I've taken over 2 cameras as well on the thing at the moment. So we'll have to wait for Adam to come back. Fortunately, we're nearing the end, so we should be okay. Make sure you join our FPL Podcast Mini League. There will be a prize for first place, including a guest appearance on our first pre-season podcast of next season. The Mini League code is LV24ZG. So that's LV24ZG, or our YouTube watchers can join using the auto-join link in the description below. I would say many thanks as usual to Adam, but he seems to have disappeared. So hopefully you're okay there, Adam. And thank you very much as usual to our loyal watchers and listeners for their great questions and comments. We really do appreciate it. And many thanks for your appearance as well, Rich. Great insight and chat as per usual. Really appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to get hold of you?
I'm at Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter.
Okay. And Adam, where can people get hold of you? I think you would say something along the lines of at Hopcroft 13. I think we'll go with that. That's not bad.
That's not bad.
Not bad. I'm not sure I did him justice there, to be fair. But my Twitter handle is at Fergie222. So this video recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watch, please press the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. And if you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. It really does help us increase our rankings. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_podcast. So please follow and feel free to ask any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, brand new and groundbreaking points prediction tool, and much, much more. All of which is on our new free app, where you will find wherever you get your apps. Searching for Fantasy Football Hub. To join thousands of other fantasy managers and sign up to the hub to use all our amazing resources, please click the top link in the description below. You will not regret it. We'll be back next week. We're off to find Adam in a minute, but we'll be back next week taking stock of the season so far before we preview Game Week 5 the week after. See you then. Stay safe and good night. Good night.
Cheers all.